6:02, Mayor.
Did I just hear it's 6:02?
Yes, it is.
I'd like to call the meeting to order if we have everyone checked back in.
Is this being recorded?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can we say the Pledge of Allegiance? I'll lead. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jackie, could you call roll?
Mayor Holston. Councillor Whitney.
Here.
Councillor Coker.
Here.
Councillor Splitoff.
Here, and we didn't get any information from Mayor Holston. We heard her lips, seen her lips move, but no
Councillor
acknowledgement.
Kenyon.
Here.
Councillor Bjornson.
Here.
Councillor Hollett.
Here.
Brenna Christman.
Here.
Priscilla Davidson.
Here.
Kevin Gobelman. Jan Christensen.
Here.
I'm here.
That was
Jan
Kevin.
Christensen.
Okay.
Jan's here.
Okay. April Allen. Jan Hooker.
Here.
That's everyone.
Thank you. I'd like to ask now if there's anyone who needs to declare any conflicts of interest.
Councillor Hollett. I have a for the city of Oakridge under Clarking Group or for the fire department as a
This is Priscilla. I need to declare a potential conflict. My husband works for Oakridge Police Department.
This is Councillor Bjornson. I'm going to declare a potential because I am on the volunteer roster at the fire department.
Brenna Christman, potential conflict. My husband works for the Public Works Department, City of Oakridge.
April Allen here. I am also on the fire department as a volunteer, and I caretake at Greenwater's rest area for the city.
April, could you declare if that's a potential or an actual conflict?
Councillor Kenyon.
Yes.
For Councillor Hollett, mine is a potential. I misspoke and said actual.
I have a
It's
potential
not
conflict
an
of interest.
actual during budget meeting. Sorry about that.
That's what I. Did someone else start to speak?
I think I heard April say that she was declaring a potential as Chrissy was starting to speak as well.
Thank you. Okay, is that everyone? let's move into
Counselor
public
Kenyon,
comment. Sorry,
did you get my correction?
I did. I made a note of it. You have a potential conflict.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Again, I can't see hands, so unless Brian can add me as a moderator or something, that might help. But if there's any citizens here who would like to make public comment, go ahead and unmute yourselves and take turns with public comment. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead with the meeting. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from March 30th and April 7th. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. Approval of the meeting minutes of March 30th, 2021 and April 7th, 2021.
I'll second.
Thank you. Can we call for a vote?
Mayor Holston,
Oh, I apologize. Is there any discussion on the topic of the minutes before we call for the vote? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. Thank you, Jackie.
Mayor Holston,
Can you hear me, Jackie?
no, not, just barely.
Okay, I'll work on it.
Oh, now we can.
Oh, okay, good.
Counselor Whitney,
Aye.
Counselor Coker,
Aye.
Counselor Spleedoff,
Aye.
Counselor Kenyon,
Aye.
Counselor Bjornson,
Aye.
Counselor Hollett,
Aye.
Brenna Chrisman,
Aye.
Priscilla Davidson,
Aye.
Kevin Gobelman,
Aye.
Jan Christensen,
Aye.
April Allen,
Aye.
Jan Hooker.
Aye.
That's all.
Thank you, Jackie. Brian, will it be you that wants to go into the old business response to outstanding questions?
Actually, Eric has developed a brief to answer those questions and provide further information.
Brian,
So
I can't hear you. Are you muted?
let me try it without the headphones.
How do you hear me now?
Oh, I can.
Headphones don't work. Okay. Eric has developed a brief to answer the questions that were asked of him at the last session and provide further information. So I'll ask him to sort of respond to that agenda item. Eric, are you up and ready?
Yes.
Let me stop the share here. Okay, so over to you.
Okay, so Chrissy asked, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
And you can see the screen, the
Correct.
City of Oakridge slide.
I can.
Yes, yes.
So Chrissy asked me about kind of doing a review of the emergency services fund. So that's what I'm going to do first. Maybe not. No, I'm going to talk about fund accounting first. So I just wanted to remind everyone the City of Oakridge funds are all these funds that are listed here: general fund, street fund. I'm not going to read them all. I'm sure you've all seen them many times before. I just want to reiterate what fund accounting is about. The focus of fund accounting is on accountability rather than on making a profit. funds are used by governments because they need to maintain very tight control over their resources. A separate budget is established for each fund to facilitate being able to track the amount of expenditures against the level of available funding. Each fund is structured so that the user can determine the extent to which cash has been used for its intended purpose. For example, if a zoo receives donations that are intended solely for animal exhibits, then the cash is recorded within the fund for animal exhibits and cannot be spent on any other activities such as general maintenance. So our water fund says this fund accounts for the revenues and expenses of the water utility. The primary revenue source is fees for services, and normal and repeated transfers in and out of an enterprise fund are not recommended practice. That's not me saying it. That's just the way it is. I just want everyone to be aware of that. So now on to the historic review of the Emergency Services Fund. So I looked at all the financial statements from 2020 back to 2004. It was in 2005 that the city combined the fire and the ambulance and quote, to get a better handle on the total operational costs of the department. In 2005, the Emergency Services Fund was established as a special revenue fund. Let's see. Previous to that, the ambulance department was an enterprise fund, which means it was set up to try to make money to pay for itself. And the fire department was part of the general fund, so it just used all the property tax revenue and all the other tax revenue funded it. So a special revenue fund is a fund used within a government entity to record the proceeds from certain revenue sources for which fund usage is restricted. So I think the special revenue fund was set up because the ambulance department actually brought in revenue and they wanted to make sure that the ambulance revenue was used for ambulance and fire. In the financial statements in 2005, it says Emergency Services Fund. This fund is a combination of the ambulance and fire departments. Costs are paid primarily from ambulance user charges and a transfer from the general fund. So this special revenue fund is saying that the cost should be paid primarily from the ambulance. According to the text, yeah, I just said that. Okay, so since 2005, there have been 14 comments made in the management discussion and analysis section of the financial statements. That's the second part of the financial statements where the management of the city of Oakridge makes comments about the financial status of the city. There were positive comments made 2005, 2006, 2007. Beginning in 2008, there were negative comments being made about the Emergency Services Fund, just to the effect that it was costing more than they were expecting. From 2008 through 2011, the comments were focused on the declining fund balance, which means like the fund balance. That's kind of like your savings account. You go through the year, at the end, how much do you have left? You put that in savings. That's basically your fund balance. And every year, that balance was declining. From 2012 through 15, there weren't any specific comments made. Starting in 2017, every financial statement has been raising concerns over how the city is going to be able to sustain funding. And the comments get more serious as time goes on. Each comment since 2017 states that the city council and management are looking for a solution. So that's 5 years of looking for a solution. So we're going to look at this graph. I know you guys love my graphs. The bottom line is the ambulance revenue, the blue line down here. It's showing that it, on average, since 2005 through 2020, the rate of increase on ambulance revenue is 1.9%. The middle line that's gray is the personnel costs of the Emergency Services Fund. And on average, it goes up 3.3% a year. while total expenditures being the orange line at the top, that's personnel plus the M&S, materials and services, is going up on an average of 4.93% per year. So the first thing I do, I look at this, obviously the total costs and the personnel costs are going up faster at a steeper rate than the ambulance revenue coming in. So my next question was, is ambulance revenue even outpacing inflation? So this next graph shows you this orange line, that's inflation. If you started at the same dollar amount and did this as inflation, you can see the ambulance revenue only ever beat inflation in 1 year. So just to put that in perspective, it's hard to say that it's decreasing in revenue, but it's not keeping up with inflation. So the amount of money that the ambulance was bringing in 2005 isn't even comparable to what it's bringing in 2020. Also, when we looked at that special revenue thing, it said that the costs were supposed to be paid primarily from ambulance revenue. So I've got a green line here at 50%. The red line is how much ambulance revenue has been coming in over the years. You can see 2005 through 2007, the ambulance was bringing in more than 50% of the revenue needed in the ESF fund. And in 2018, it did as well, but none of the other years. So just information for you. Next, we're going to talk about conflict of interest, which was a huge thing when I was going to accounting school, because of, I'm sure you guys have heard of Enron and WorldCom and all those other accounting problems that were huge. Those were all based on conflict of interest. So I just wanted to share what accountants say about conflict of interest and how we deal with it. Because there's some, there's something on the second slide that's pretty important. So definition, a conflict of interest occurs when an individual's personal interests, family, friendship, financial, or social factors could compromise his or her judgment, decisions, or actions in the workplace. So people can become easily biased because of friendship, flattery. They could be influenced to make a decision because of potential gain of power or money. Conflicts can occur when an individual makes or influences a decision to do so for personal gain. Transparency, being completely open and frank, becomes important when dealing with both actual and potentially perceived conflicts of interest. The true test of verifying whether a matter is just a potentially perceived conflict of interest or an actual conflict of interest is disclosure. When it comes to conflicts of interest, appearance is as important as reality. That is extremely important to accountants. If we think that someone watching what we're doing feels that we have a conflict of interest, internally, we just say we have a conflict of interest and we go from there. It's important to disclose both potentially perceived and actual conflicts of interest to allow others to evaluate the matter and make the decision, rather than keep it to oneself and create an ethical situation. Why is that important? Because this is it. The individual cannot make the determination whether there's a conflict of interest or not, because they're not independent and they're not objective. The test that the disciplinary bodies look at is whether a reasonable person looking at the circumstance of the particular case thinks that there was a real possibility of conflict. So as accountants, it doesn't matter what we think about our conflict of interest. It matters what the people watching us think. And that's the most important piece. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And that's the end of my slides for this week. Does anyone have any questions?
I do, Counselor Hollett.
Go ahead, Counselor.
I wanted to mention the reason that I asked Eric Kaitola those questions about what was going on in 2005 was because historically every ambulance company or any ambulance in anywhere was profiting at that time. Unfortunately, after that, all the federal with Medicare and Medicaid changed substantially, and that changed for everybody across the board. Also, I know that Oakridge historically paid for, I believe, 2 employees from the Ambulance Enterprise Fund and 2 employees from the general fund for the fire protection services. And my point was that currently there's this idea that tax money shouldn't pay for fire services. And my point is, I think that's a little absurd. Tax money pays for public safety. It may not pay for ambulance, but our user fees are over $400,000. So my point to that was, I think we need to consider what they did back then, which was putting part of the employees' salaries from the ambulance and part of the employees from the fire tax dollars, because the employees are dual purpose. And, you know, that was brought up because of this budget having 0 tax dollars being allocated to the fire department. That is why this came up. $0, 0 tax dollars from the citizens going to the fire department. That's why I went there. So I do really appreciate that historical information, because I know it has been brought up in the past and no finance director has actually took the time to dig it up and look into it. So thank you, Eric.
Yeah, can I just say one thing about that, about the tax money? I hope you're not, I hope no one thinks that I'm saying that the fire department doesn't deserve any tax revenue.
No.
I'm not saying that. I don't think that.
I don't think that at all, for the record. I'm just stating
Okay.
my opinion that I think citizens believe that their tax dollars pay for public safety, and that meaning those 3 entities, which in reality, user fees pay for ambulance, but tax dollars pay for police and fire. And I totally get that, Eric, that you're just putting the info out there.
Right. The other thing I want to say was, when I put the budget together and I put the imposed public safety fee money, all of it in the fire department, was just because there's always this question about how much tax revenue, who deserves what. I don't make that determination. That's the budget committee. When they slice up the dollars and put them in the funds, that's who's deciding who deserves what. That public safety fee could go to the general fund. That 608,000 could be in the general fund. The budget committee could split that any way they want. They could put 1/3 into police, 1/3 into fire, 1/3 into ambulance, take property tax revenue for both. I mean, we're really talking about one pot of money. However people want to divvy it up so that it looks the way they want it to look is perfectly fine with me. But it really is just one pot of money funding everything.
I have one more thing to say, if it's okay, Counselor Kenyon.
Go ahead.
I really appreciate you saying that, Eric. That I agree is spot on. My problem is the fire department and the ambulance is targeted, and people are making statements saying that it is sucking and draining the city department, when the truth is the fire department takes, you know, after you look at income and those things, it takes half as much as what it costs to run the police department. And it takes, you know, I'm not sure compared to City Hall, but this $35 user fee on the water rate, you know, I think it would be very unfair to say that $35 fee is to run the ambulance or run the department. You know, there's a lot of areas in the whole entire city that if there's a fee assessed to the water bill, it's supporting many areas. And looking at the numbers, adding and minusing, actually getting the budget and looking at the line items, I don't see that the fire department is the biggest drain on the city. And I hope people are really looking at what the numbers are and what the income is.
Is that
I agree.
everything, Chrissy?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Eric.
Can I show one more thing? Since we're kind of talking about that seat safety fee, I'm going to see.
Yes, please. And then I'm gonna call Kathy and then Audie and then Melissa.
Can you guys see this fake water bill that's up on the screen?
Yes.
So I've been talking to QSL Printing to help us reformat the water bill so it looks better and so it's more understandable to everyone. This is a completely fake bill. I just want everyone to look at the public safety charges that's like right in the middle of the bill. Now it says ambulance and it says $35 and it's up to the budget committee. It could say ambulance, fire, police, depending on what the final outcome is of the budget. We can put whatever we want in there and whatever dollar amounts we want in there. But I just wanted to show you guys that I've been working on this to try to make it clear to the citizens where those charges will be going.
Thank you, Eric. Kathy, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I know my
Barely.
sound has been weird. Barely? Okay, let me see if I can get it better. Is that any better? I lean in. Okay. So I'm looking at this and listening to this, and I know there is this comments that, and Councillor Hollett is accurate when she says people kind of get confused about what we're saying or what we're seeing. But I have heard from quite a few people too who understand that and personally, I don't think it's the fire department's fault or the ambulance department's fault or the police department's fault. This is a big picture, and the questions before us as a budget committee aren't laying blame, because you really can't lay blame. I think Eric is right when he uses the words, in my opinion, of a big pot. It's how do we want to divvy that pot up? And then what is the consequences of that decision? So, I truly think that the conversation about, well, it sounds like we're trying to blame this or we're trying to blame that, is in some ways, I understand educational, but it's also counterproductive. Because for me right now, I look at my city's money and I want very much to be able to continue to provide the services that I have right now to everyone. And, and lots of other things that go with it. That's a general broad statement. And so I'm willing to say, where can we pare down services? Where can we do that? Because we were presented with, in my opinion, 3 options. Actually, it wasn't my opinion, it was in writing. One is the service fee. One is to reduce staff. One is to pursue privatization. Those are 3 options that were presented, and yet we're only talking about making sure everybody doesn't feel like we're trying to blame the fire department. I would like to see more discussion about what are the alternatives if this $35 fee isn't something that you can swallow, or as a group we feel we can't do. Are there ways that we can adjust it? I would like to know if we did it on a sliding scale. So those that qualify for LIHEAP only get charged $10. What would that do to our revenues? There have to be ways to mitigate some of this. I do believe we need to do something because I don't want to reduce our services. And I think we can do something that is fair to everybody. So I would just encourage, I'd like to hear more about what people want to do and instead of what we can't do or are concerned that we're giving off some sort of blame. And I don't think anyone is doing that. So I'll let that go. That's all, Dawn. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy. Could you lower your hand?
I'm getting there.
Okay. Audie, you're next. Go ahead. And then I see Michelle would be after Melissa. Unmute my Audie.
Thank you, Chairman. Eric, I got a question for you.
Sure.
After going over that reading that you give us for potential and actual, so me being friends with, say, Don Kenyon or whoever else on the board in here, does that now, am I now a potential?
No, I'm going to answer as if I was an accountant. That doesn't present a conflict of interest unless someone in your group of friends is pressuring you to make certain decisions, then that could be a conflict of interest. And I'm just answering from an accountant's perspective. I take conflict of interest really seriously. So like if I was in your position and I had friends and one of them was like pressuring me really hard to vote their way or say something, then to me, that would be a conflict of interest for my profession.
I just wanted to make sure because, you know, I get quite a few friends and quite a few of them are on the board, and I wanted to make sure that it's not a conflict of interest or a potential, because they're not going to sway me to vote anyway. I'm going to vote the way I want, but I'm making sure as a friend, because it did say that in there, and you in it.
Don't want them to hear. We don't know how to do that.
Excuse me, can we please have everyone mute? Unless you're speaking, please keep yourself muted. Thank you.
Yeah, Audie, I think the conflict with friends would be like if your friends said they weren't going to be your friend anymore if you didn't vote some way. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not an expert at conflict of interest. I only look at conflict of interest from my point of view as an auditor, and it's really strict. I take it very seriously. So I just wanted to share that as kind of an example. I'm not pointing fingers or saying anything's wrong with what people are proclaiming.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, because the perception of and what someone else thinks and you said that we're not to be the judge of it, someone else is the judge of it. So I just wanted to make sure that it was clear there that where we're looking at, because you're reading one thing and you're saying another, and actually, if we're friends, I think that we're all a conflict of interest, you know, or not a conflict, but a potential conflict of interest.
Yeah, again, I'm just going to reiterate, all that stuff I read was from the perspective of an accountant, and I'm not, the conflict of interest requirements and standards for city council might be different than auditors and accountants. I don't know that. I just wanted to share basically what I have to do as an accountant.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
Yeah.
Thank you, Audie. Are you done?
Yes, I concede the floor.
Thank you. So Melissa, I believe you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Kenyon. I'm just going to go over this really briefly because I just want my thoughts put out there, and mostly in response to what Chrissy and Eric were speaking about earlier. As he said about the conflicts, perception is important. And everything I'm hearing from, you know, the official side and citizens, private citizens, is why can't the fire department support itself? Why aren't they bringing in more money? Why can't they find more revenue streams? Why can't they fundraise? The blame has been laid for several years. The way the budget is proposed specifically lays blame to the fire department. So there is a perception of blame, whether you say there is or not. And I'm not saying that you feel this way, Eric, or that you are blaming the department. I get what you're saying about one, bowl of money for everywhere, but there weren't less general fund, less tax money put into all of the other funds across the board, and then the $35 fee proposed to cover all of those deficits. It was solely taken out of the fire department to make it look like the fire department has us over $600,000 deficit, and that is just purely untrue, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm going to go ahead and call on Michelle, but Kathy, I see your hand, and I want to make sure that we don't have some other budget committee members that have something to say before we round back to you, but I will if no one else puts their hand up. So Michelle, go ahead.
I do have some things to say, and I don't have a raise my hand button on my phone. So when
I'll call on you after Michelle then. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you, Dawn. So I just want to make this clear. We need to stop the blame game. It's not fire and AMBO versus police. They're all needed just as much as the other. Now, that's my opinion. And I do have a question for you, Eric.
Sure.
It was recently shared, and I also put in for public record. The numbers on some of the wages that are being made in this town, they're outrageous.
Well,
am I missing something with this total number and not reading the budget correctly, or?
I don't know exactly what you're looking at. I know what I put out so that it could be provided. And on the first cover sheet, there's a key that talks about all the stuff that's included in people's wages.
Mm-hmm.
And so for someone's wage, it's their wage that they get paid, their overtime, their standby, their special out of class pay, their health insurance benefits, their dental benefits, life insurance, 3 or 4 different PERS contributions, Social Security and Medicaid, and I might be missing a couple others, but it's not just a wage. It's all of the costs that are required to hire an employee. And those are accurate straight out of the accounting system, that the accounting system numbers have been audited by auditors, and those are official financial statements with the state of Oregon. So
Okay, so when I'm looking at the budget and I'm reading administrative overhead, is that where the overtime comes into play, or is that something else?
no, that is something else. I don't have the budget. I might have the, give me 1 second. I am 99% certain that when you look at the personnel services for each department, there's an overtime line item in there that has a dollar amount in it. Let me get to one of these funds really quick so I can say that for sure. Yes, when you look at personnel services for like the street fund, it's health insurance, PERS, workers' comp, payroll taxes, overtime, standby, and then each person's like line item of their wage, the VIVA contributions, and the life insurance. So all of those numbers are required to hire employees, have employees hired.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that for me. Now I understand better at what the big number is and what it includes.
Right.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dawn.
You're welcome. Thank you, Michelle. And I'm wondering, Eric, is it possible that you could maybe, since we are talking so much about the fire department or ambulance, could you screen share the actual first page of the budget that that has that department so that we can see what we're all talking about?
The first page of the budget?
Oh, I'm sorry, the first page of the Emergency Services Fund.
Counselor, this is the CA.
Yes, go ahead.
I haven't even briefed that fund yet. I think it'd be better served to go through the funds in order and talk about it at the end if you have questions once I'm done.
Okay, that sounds good. So right now we're actually responding to Eric's presentation. And if anyone else has questions on the presentation, go ahead and throw your hand up. I do see Kathy's up and waiting, so I'm gonna call on her unless I don't see any, or if someone doesn't speak. Oh, wait, I apologize, Priscilla, I was gonna get to you.
Okay.
Priscilla.
Thank you. This is Priscilla. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that I don't think anybody wants to see EMS fire department go away. That I don't think that's an issue. I just wanted to see that there's no commingling of department budget funds. Like the police department cut 1.5 positions already for EMS, and it's been said that if the fire department doesn't get the $35 in the water bill, that they're going to cut 2 more positions in police. And I just want to make sure that, you know, every department is responsible for their own budget. And if the funds want to be divided up, like Eric had said, then that's fine. But police has never had a problem with coming in under budget.
The police department budget is also twice the amount.
Chrissy, please, it's Priscilla's floor right now.
So I'm not at war with fire department, Chrissy. But I don't want to see the threat of police being cut because another budget can't come in budget. And I want a transparency in numbers. And I talked to Cowlitz 2 Fire and Rescue about ways to come up for money for the EMS. And I got some great ideas, and I will pass those along. And if you guys know about the ground emergency medical transport, that'd be something to look into. I don't know if you are aware of that, but there are some things to deal with the issues at hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla. If you're finished, I'll move on.
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Kathy, I believe you're next. Oh, I'm sorry, Kathy. I keep postponing you, but I do see Brenna has her hand up now. So if Brenna could go ahead, and then we'll move to Kathy and then Melissa.
Thank you. So I know I'm new. My question is, so say you vote for the $35, that seems to be just a temporary fix. You need, what would be the plan long-term? I mean, I know I work in rural healthcare. We have several grant writers and billers and coders working in Oakridge. Medicaid and Medicare are never going to pay more than they already do now. That's just the nature of working and living in rural health. So that's my concern, is the $35 is a lot for some people, and it's just a temporary, it's just a Band-Aid.
Thank you. Are you done, Brenna?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Kathy, go ahead.
I just want to say that I just would like us all to move on. We haven't even gone through the details of all the budget sheets that we have, and we're beginning to have these conversations, which are really important. But I would really like to go through each sheet so that we can get an explanation and ask questions, and then can engage in a better conversation. So I'm just encouraging us to move forward and let the explanations happen so that we can have intelligent conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do see that Melissa's hand is down now, so I think that it's a good time to move into.
Can I just say a couple more things real quick before we get out of here?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So Brenna brought up what's the long-term solution? There needs to be a long-term solution talked about and figured out. That's a very valid point. I'm going to make a very very poorly received statement. The fire department could be volunteer. That's why it gets blamed. There's no such, I never saw any such thing as a volunteer police force, but the first presentation I did had 7 volunteer fire departments in cities Oakridge's size. I'm just going to throw that out there. People are starting from the fact that the fire department needs to be paid. That's not the real starting point. The real starting point is to ask, do they need to be paid? If everyone answers yes, then we're talking. So the other thing about spreading the public safety fee, it's a real issue for everyone. Let's solve it. What do you want me to do? I can take a third of the public safety fee and put it in police. I could put 2/3 of the public safety fee and put it in fire, a third for fire, a third for the ambulance. I want to end this the budget number in there being an issue, because it doesn't need to be. I can easily fix it. What do people want me to do?
Thank you, Eric. And I'm going to end, I'm sorry, Melissa, but I'm going to end, as Kathy suggested, discussion on this topic, because I think that is totally appropriate for us to get our presentation. I'm not sure if Brian intended to go into the general fund first or the emergency services fund, but Brian, could you please go ahead?
Well, actually, next on the agenda, there was an item that asked if there are any current requested changes to the restricted funds, which I briefed last session. I kind of wanted to put those, and if there weren't, I'm notionally going to put those behind us for now and start going forward with the general funds or the governmental funds.
Right. So are you asking if anyone else has any more recommendations for changes on the funds we've already discussed?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I will open that up to the floor. Is there anyone here who feels that there's any other changes necessary to the street fund, the water fund, the wastewater fund, or the stormwater fund? I believe those are.
NOIP.
What's that?
NOIP.
Oh, and the, thank you, and the industrial part. Okay, I don't see any hands up for that, so.
Okay, let me go to screen show here, if it'll work. Can everyone see the screen, the title page? Okay.
Yeah.
I can.
So now we're going to start going into the governmental funds and start with that, the general fund, our largest fund. It's divided into departments primarily, and you can see them there listed before you. Some carry a little more equity than others, but that's what we'll go. So this is the admin department, and this is the personnel services. So there was an error here. If you've recently renewed my contract at the same level, which was $90,330. So I don't know why it ended up in previous years as well as this year, but that will be the pay for me. Everything else is really, it's, as you can see, we've gone down a little bit in the finance director. A lot of that was transition between Bill and Eric. And everything else is relatively stable. There is a reduction if you look at the bottom line in the total personnel services, and that's primarily attributable to the furlough of our community services coordinator at the beginning or the end of last fiscal year. Any questions on the personnel expenses for admin? Okay.
Brian, if there are none, I actually have a question on that.
Okay.
If there's none of it. I'm curious why it is that we have the assistant planning director in the admin section versus having it in the actual planning program.
Yeah, it was probably just an arbitrary choice because she does many things on top of, she does accounts receivable. as well as permitting, as well as general admin work. So you could probably pigeonhole that employee in many different places. So it's probably just a decision made long ago.
Okay, and then my next question would be, would it make sense to you, just as the Public Works Department kind of splits their people up and puts them in the different sections that they work in, parts of their salaries? Would it make sense to you that we would do the same with this position?
Not really, because it's one fund. It's the general fund. So
Oh, all general.
I just don't know if there'd be an advantage there other than maybe some fidelity in between departments, but it all comes out of the general fund. So I don't believe that'd be an advantage.
Okay, I'm just checking. Oh, I wanted to ask, because I don't really think I've seen it anywhere, but you have I forget the name of the actual position, but we had to add in our supplemental budget earlier this year I think it was $53,000 for an unexpected expense for part of the wages of one of the people that have been helping you. Is it from Rain or Rare?
Now the amount was 23,500.
Okay, yeah.
And that was for our Rare participant, who's a graduate student at U of O, and it's a program that they host. Of that 23.5, though, 20 of it was paid for by grants.
Okay, and so where is that in the budget? Could you help me understand?
Well,
is that through the admin or
this budget here? She's not a permanent employee. Her service ends in July, though I'm hoping to get her back on.
And so if it is back on, what fund is it reflected in?
Well, since we haven't been approved yet, I haven't decided, but I'm hoping to, because much of her work has been around biomass and OIP. So my desire is to at least put a good portion of her salary from that fund. But again, it's all notional because we haven't been approved yet for a second year of a Rare participant. It's not in this budget.
But this current, okay, that answers my questions. Does anyone else have any questions of the administration department before Brian moves on? Oh, I see Eric has his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Dawn, that when we have someone like the Rare participant, she won't show up in personnel services. She'll show up in materials and services as like a contractor.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anyone else? Okay, Brian, go ahead.
Okay, now we'll look at the materials and services part of the admin. Again, I'm sorry. Okay. Everything is relatively stable here. Some cost of living inflation type increases in insurance. We are a little more efficient on utilities. And the big thing is, because of the pandemic, obviously the city council could not travel. So and I anticipate similar restrictions on travel to some degree. So I've reduced that travel and training for city council to 6,000. Other than that, like I say, it's a stable budget. So only a slight decrease overall with the total on the bottom line. Any questions on M&S?
I have a question.
Councilor Bjornson.
Go ahead.
Yes, the audit and accounting amount, is that what goes to our yearly auditor, or is that where summer shares would come in? Or can you explain that one to me real quickly?
I'll defer to Eric on the total. I know that our audit does get paid through that line item. I'm not sure about summer.
Yes, that is summer and also the audit fees.
So can you tell me how much goes to each one of those entities?
Summer's on a contract basis, so we just pay her for the time she works. And I've been trying to use her very, very little and trying to take over her roles. So maybe in a few minutes, I could look up how much we've spent versus the budget, and I could tell you for this year, but I can't answer about the audit fees right now because the audit committee actually has to approve the new auditor next week.
Okay.
So I don't know that if I could say what that number is before it gets approved. That's my only hesitation. But let me look up the summer thing and I'll try to get back to you in the next few minutes here.
Okay, thank you.
Eric, since you're looking into that, could you check? I believe there are 2 contracts for summer. One is for helping prepare the audit, which has a dollar amount, and then the other is, like you mentioned, the hourly to help reconcile at the end of every month.
Okay, yes, I can look into that. And just so you know, Summer's not reconciling anything at the end of the month anymore. I'm doing it.
Okay. Do we have a second set of eyes reviewing those numbers?
Well, I mean, what it says in the accounting software has to match what the bank says. So if I don't get them to be exactly the same, then it's not reconciled. But no, there's no second set of eyes looking at it.
Okay, just as a side note, I think that we should look into, there was an audit done back in, well, it was actually presented to the council, I think in 2011 or 2012, that suggested, our auditors actually suggested that we did assign someone to be the second set of eyes. It did not have to be an accountant, but could we just look into that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
Quick
you.
question on
Are you
that.
thinking, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Sorry, that was Counselor Bjorn just jumping in. I'm sorry.
Sorry, if you don't mind, I'll finish really quickly, Melissa, and then I'll call on you.
I just got one question, Dawn.
Yes, of course. But I just want to finish by saying that I am pretty positive that the council made a resolution that would have the, you know, that we would do that moving forward. So I want to make sure that we are following the guidelines of the council.
Yep, nope. I don't have any objection to that whatsoever. When you say a second set of eyes, are you thinking someone internal or external?
I believe the answer is it could be either.
Okay.
And I do know, Dan Barkley, I see your hand up and I appreciate that, but I believe right now we're just keeping this discussion within the budget committee itself. If you don't mind maybe emailing us what you're thinking right now. And Melissa, I believe you're next.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't raise my blue hand. I was just kind of going to ask the same thing. If we do need a second set of eyes, especially by resolution, does it need to be internal, external, and does it have to be paid, or can it be somebody that volunteered to do that?
My memory says it could be a volunteer, but that's why I want to look up if we have a resolution. And then is that everything you had, Melissa?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Kathy, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say 2 things. First, I had a question. Brian, what is the additional 5,000 for a telephone when there was nothing there? What did we split out that we now are splitting out and says telephone?
Eric, I think he made a different category. So Eric, you want to answer that specifically? If you're not.
Yeah, I just split the telephone out of the utilities line. I wanted to just have a little bit more visual on that instead of it all being wrapped into one.
Okay, I just also wanted to comment on the request about whether or not there was a resolution to do something. That really is council business and not budget business. So we'd like to stick to the budget, but it's an important question. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate you bringing that up, but I was just thinking that since it directly relates to this topic, it would probably be important to know if we have to do something in the budget or not. Is there any other questions on this section of the administration department? Melissa, did you have another question?
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Brian, let's go ahead and go into, it looks like building and planning.
Yes, building and planning is next. Virtually, it's unchanged from the previous year. Any questions? Okay.
I'm sorry, Brian, I keep waiting for everyone else to have a chance first before I ask mine, but I do have a question on this. Is it possible to look into just having an outside contract do this kind of work? Or is it necessary for the city to have a fund for this?
Well, in effect, we are. So for building, we outsource to the Northwest Code Professionals in Eugene. It does require our assistant planner to do the kind of the paperwork behind it to get it started, but they're the ones that actually are the experts that go out to the sites and do the code reviews and all that. From the planning part of it, if you recall, I came to the council when we furloughed the community services director and got approval on a contract with LCOG to do kind of the heavy duty planning. Unfortunately, there's a lot more to it than that, and it's fallen upon me, which is kind of why we are where we are. But so we are outsourcing as much as we can in those functions, but it would still appear here as a materials and services, as a professional services.
Right. My concern with this fund is that when you also look at, because this here is only showing us the contracts that we have and the administrative overhead, it's not also showing the amount that we're spending on personnel services to manage this program. And my concern is in the section we haven't covered yet, which is the revenue for the general fund. The only direct source of revenue is the, I believe, the permitting fees. I think it's a $60,000 revenue, if I remember right. So this department is actually costing us quite a bit more than the revenue that we're generating from our permits. Is that accurate?
It is, but you aren't paying a full-time employee a fully loaded cost to do that equivalent work.
Right, and that's kind of why I asked if it was possible to see how much, personnel services actually cost for that department. But when you're looking at the total requirements of this fund being $111,500, and it doesn't include any personnel services, and the revenue coming in being, I think it's around 61,000. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I'm sorry. Know that, we're contracting it out. So those professional services, what we're paying the Northwest Code Professionals is personnel services that we don't have to pay someone in Oakridge. So that's the only way you can reflect the contracted service is in the materials and services. You don't put it in the personnel block.
Right, I understand. Maybe I should ask it a different way. Is it possible to maybe increase our contract that we have for professional services that would be inclusive of all of our needs, rather than paying someone at City Hall to be the assistant planner?
Well, they're not going to, I don't believe you're going to see Northwest Code professionals come out here and place an employee that's going to be a customer service person taking permits, and it's not part of their scope of their work that they or services they provide. If that's what you're asking.
Yeah, that was what I was asking.
They don't do that kind of work. All we do is we get the permits in the proper order. I do a site review on them, and then we send it to Northwest Code, and what they do is make sure that the plans are in accordance with ORS, and then go out to the site and make sure that they're in compliance with all the code. So they don't offer kind of a customer service type aspect to the citizens of whoever's paying the bill.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. Are there any other questions before we move on to another program?
Yes.
Audie, go ahead.
I had my hand up first for quite some time.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kathy. I don't see who does it first.
Yeah. So in this planning, I think it's a little convoluted. We don't have a planner, but the planning services that are provided are the ability to tell individuals how to fill out their form, what we need as a city to issue a permit, and then review it. So personnel services, in its essence, are reflected in here. But I hope we're not insinuating that we don't have to have good customer service at City Hall, because we really have good customer service. It's gotten so much better. And, it could be a real convoluted thing to have someone from outside explaining to someone on the phone in Oakridge what to do. I just don't think that would serve our public at all. But I did have a question about the administrative overhead. Brian, you mentioned that you're doing more and more of the heavy lifting that we had hoped that LCOG could do. And so is that something that you think is sustainable? Is that going to be a real raw spot for us in a year or so?
I guess the way I'll answer is that I don't think we're doing as much with the planning commission that we could do. It just gets prioritized out with other duties that I have. So, I'm focused on making sure that people get their site reviews done so they can build their new house, because I think that's important. But these sort of things like Airbnb policies and growth policies, unfortunately, are taking a lower priority, and which means that our planning commission isn't as efficient as it could be. So, I don't think it's going to be something that the city fails, but it could be better.
Okay, thank you very much.
Audie, can I put you on pause for 1 second? I want to find out if what Eric has to say might help. Is that okay? Okay, Eric, please go ahead.
This is just in reference to the audit and accounting fees. Do you want to do that now, or you can ask me later?
Oh yeah, you've got the answers from an earlier conversation.
Right.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, so this year so far, Summer, we've paid her $13,700, and the audit cost $25,500, or a total, let's see. I messed something up. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to come back. I wrote down something wrong. I'm so sorry.
That's totally fine. Audie, do you want to go with your question now?
No, it's okay. Thank you. I slipped it.
Okay, I'd like to just quickly respond, Kathy. I had no intention of implying that we don't have great customer service. I'm just simply looking for information on, is it possible that more things could be contracted out for less money than we're currently spending, and it's purely financial. With that being said, oh, Eric, if you have something else, then we'll move back into the next fund with Brian. Go ahead, Eric.
I'm not ready yet, so just skip me. Sorry, I
Oh,
forgot to
okay.
put my hand down.
Came up again. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Brian.
Next is the library. This budget is unchanged, so no changes here. Any questions?
Did
Okay.
I hear someone? Is there a question? Oh, Audie, go ahead.
I'm on the library board now,
Uh-huh.
and they're going to be proposing.
Is it something that's in this current proposal for the budget?
I don't think so.
Okay, then can we save it and
Yes.
talk about that in another appropriate time?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there anyone else with? Okay, Bobby.
Yes, so I think I might know where Audie was going. If I remember right, last year we cut the library budget. And so I'm imagine they would like to have that back. So well, that's probably where he was going with that.
I do see from looking at this page, it actually looks identical to last year.
No,
last year from the year prior.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, 31 was lower the year prior, so it looks like it went up.
Okay. No, I was just recalling something that that Georgie had mentioned to me. So
okay.
I just don't remember all the details.
Just for the awareness of the committee, understand that we have a year or two, but we do carry a special relationship with the surrounding libraries. But one of the requirements is you have to have at least a 0.5 FTE full-time employee working for the library. So that's going to come up, and we'll of course ask for a waiver, but that could be an issue coming up in the future. We lose that status, which means you couldn't get interlibrary loans. Not a good thing, but that'll be in the future.
Thank you. Audie, if you're going to respond to what Brian just said, I'd prefer that we just move forward from that, because that he made it clear that is a future item.
Copy.
Thank you. If there's no other questions about the library, unless Bobby, you have is that a new hand?
No, it's just my first one. Sorry, I'll lower it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So the next one, it looks like it's going to be parks.
Right. So let's see. It again, relatively stable, little increase in seasonal workers. And other than that, you see the additional, let me see here. Oh, the 160 is that IMBA grant that we're still in the process of building out at Diamond View. Other than that, everything else is stable.
Are there any questions? Sorry, it sounds like I have feedback. If there are no other questions, I was wondering, Brian, if the IMBA grant, since it is clear that we haven't spent it all yet, if part of it should move over into the column for expenditures for this upcoming year.
I'm hoping to get it all obligated, but we've been delayed a little bit by the availability of a sidewalk contractor. If it gets to the point where it's apparent, then yes, we'll have to do a supplemental, or we'll change it at the last minute with the council.
Okay. Okay, that's all I had. Go ahead, Brian.
Okay, well, we're down to the WAC. Again, a stable budget, a slight increase in seasonal workers, and other than that, no changes.
Are there any questions?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So I'm really curious as to where we really are with the WAC, if it's still really cost effective to keep it open. Because I know it costs a lot of money to run the electric and power that. And you know, I know that because I was in there for a while as an employee with SNDS, my office was there, and you know, people would steal stuff, vandalize stuff. You know, it's had a lot of issues there. So I'm just throwing it out there. Is it worthwhile keeping that? I mean, I really don't have a solid opinion on it, but I just would like to ask the question.
This is CA, and just to respond, and then I'll let everybody else pitch in. But I guess my concern is, you know, I'd be happy, and I try to market it sort of on an informal basis, and we're getting to be more formal now. But I just have a concern of where the functions the WAC provides now, where are those going to go when you sell it without a plan ahead of us?
Thank you, Brian. If that's everything, I'm going to call on Kathy next.
Thank you. So as far as the WAC goes, I'm wondering, you know, they've put so much work into the theater. It looks absolutely terrific and wonderful. But I know that council went ahead and allowed that to happen, those changes and those improvements to happen. Has there, but I noticed there's not an increase in the budget at all regarding utilities at all. Do we anticipate that there will be? Have we had any discussions with the theater group about that, or do you think this will just kind of be able to roll around the whole thing?
Yeah, the actual hardcore utilities, the heat and the heating and air conditioning, I don't. Those are such a, you know, the electricity's kind of a minor part of it. I don't think you're going to see a large change in the utilities.
The salad was really good. Yeah.
Oh. Please mute yourself, Highway 58 Harold.
All right, Brian, thank you. That answered my question.
I believe it sounds like we have someone else maybe with their phone or their computer. Not
Counselor, if you'll come back, I'll mute all and you can come back and unmute. How's that?
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. My mouse wasn't moving to unmute myself. I believe that Kathy. So Bobby went. Kathy, you already spoke. Is that right? And then Chrissy and Jan, you both had your hands up about the same time. But Jan, did you have something, or do you want to pass?
No, Bobby asked the questions I was getting ready to ask. I know we've been concerned about this building for a long time, and it's just costing us more and more. And to me, one last thing, trying to find some place for the people to go that are in there now I would think that it wouldn't be as difficult as what we may think with them helping and council and the citizens helping. That's all.
Thank you, Jan. Chrissy, I believe you're next.
Okay, so I also wanted to touch on what Councilor Whitney and Jan Hooker were just talking about. I remember in last year's budget committee, we discussed this, and it seemed like we came to a consensus for the budget committee to look at selling that building and, I mean, essentially get rid of it. We did talk about, you know, how the roofs, the ceilings were caving in and all that stuff. And I really do remember we came to the consensus that we wanted to look at selling that building or somehow cutting, you know, I hate to use the word get rid of, but that's what I mean. And I also agree that it is nice that all the theater work put in there. However, Mayor Holston said that the council agreed to that, and I do not remember that coming to council. And if it did, I definitely would I'd fully admit that I am remembering things incorrectly, but I have tried to bring this up a couple times. I believe I brought it up in the January meeting when the new counselors took their seats, that we take a look at selling that building. So I'm curious when that came to council, because it really was a surprise to me that anything was being done in that building and all. And I personally would like us to pursue selling that building as well.
Well, this is the CA. It did not come to council. Lauren asked to use it and everything was at his expense to stream stage events, and I let him do it. You know, the building was unused, so I didn't see a problem with that. And, you know, I've never seen something like that go to council before. And again, I'm not opposed to selling the building. And believe me, I believe it could play a huge role in as we get to affordable housing. And what a great location to put affordable housing. So that's.
There might be somebody that wants to buy it to kind of revitalize it and keep the theater there and make more of a community center and put housing. I've heard lots of ideas, obviously not seen a buyer, but you know, if we put it out there, there might be somebody.
So can I interject here? Yes.
Please, can we keep this in order?
Well, I would like to respond to what the conversation is right now, if that's possible.
I would be happy to come back to you after everyone else has had a chance to speak, since you've already spoke. And I appreciate that you want to respond to that, but could you please hold it? I believe that if Chrissy, if you're done, Melissa, did you go yet? I believe you're next.
Okay, thank you. I was just going to ask Brian if he could remind us who all is using that building currently. And there is no revenue that comes from that building, no rentals of it, correct?
That's incorrect. There is some revenue.
Okay, thank you. Can you remind me who's using it?
The food bank, the bingo parlor, Lauren with the stage, the warming center. A lot of storage is going on with Cask and Keg. And in addition,
Brian, sounds like your audio's going out.
So those are the primary ones, and there's probably one or two more that I've forgotten, but it's relatively well utilized, including city council chambers.
Okay, and where in the budget line do those funds, which line are those funds going into?
Eric, can you answer that? Where the rents come from WAC?
Yes, I can. It'll take me a second to find it here. General fund, resources, WAC room rent, 11,000.
Okay, that's pretty right there. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then Audie, I saw your hand was next.
Okay, I'm a little confused. Are we getting any finances from anyone that's using the WAC? Or are we not?
As Eric just mentioned, $11,000.
$11,000. And that's nowhere covering anywhere that is costing us to run that.
Well,
And I agree with Councilor Hollett that we should look at getting rid of it. I mean, it's been in the past council and everything, and we need to pursue it. Because we're in dire needs, straits. I mean, it's not gonna make us come to level, but it's gonna help. And there's a lot of churches around that do bingo and they can rent out their halls and stuff. But the thing is the city needs to get away from just giving out their buildings and their rooms because there's a need for it. It'd be nice if we were in the financial stability to be able to do it, but we're not. So I'd like to see it put up on the market. I'm done.
Audie.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and respond now, and then I'll call on, I think it's Bobby and then Kathy. I actually watched yesterday our second budget meeting from last year, which covered this exact section. And what happened in that budget meeting last year is that a few items, I think it was the library, the parks, and the WAC were all discussed at the same time. And yes, when we were talking about the WAC, everyone was pretty positively looking at that we probably need to look at selling it in order to save the expense to the city and also bring a little revenue into the city. But then as the conversation went on about library and parks, we need to cut those, it was a traumatic discussion, and everybody finally ended up agreeing that what we need to do is go for the levy. So that was actually where we went with that, and we were going to come back to this and readdress it if the levy didn't pass. And so I think it's definitely something we need to look into. I think that as far as deciding whether it goes up for sale is probably a council decision, but I feel like it is possible for the budget committee to consider not funding the WAC, which would force us to put it up for sale. And I'll be done with that. And Bobby, you're next.
Thank you. So some of the discussions I remember having about this building, and what I remember from when I was really little, because I actually went to school there, all the buildings used to be their own individual building with just breezeways between them. And then when they covered those breezeways, that's where we ended up with all the issues with the water flowing in the wrong places and getting all the rot and everything that's happened. So when we talk about the gym and how people are using the gym and the theater and all of that part, that could probably easily be separated in some way. Because, if you look at all the cement and everything throughout there, you can tell that that's how it was built. So there's nothing saying we can't maintain that one small piece. And I also remember, as we talked about the gym, that it was determined that that was the most viable building there out of all the individual buildings that were connected at one point. So, that is something we can also look at, is just keeping that one portion. But I also agree, like the food room and some of the other entities that are there, there's probably other places they could go if we looked strong enough and worked hard enough as a community. And it's really hard. I agree that it's hard for us to keep supporting these, even though they're needed resources. We're not in a position to really keep supporting that as we are. And so that's, that's kind of my 2 cents and my memory of, some of the things to do with that building.
Right. Is that all you had, Bobby?
So far, I'm waiting to hear more about what people think and, what some more suggestions may be.
Okay, that's fine. Feel free to put your hand back up again later if you decide. Kathy, you're next, and then Audie.
Okay, so I think, first of all, I just like to remind the committee that we can indeed, when we approve the budget with a recommendation to council to do X, Y, or Z. I think we should be cautious about eliminating the budget for the WAC because we do have to provide ample time for, especially like the food bank, to find a different place. I also think there is another alternative. We're not giving rooms away free willy-nilly. We are charging it. We heard it's $11,000. Perhaps we consider raising the rents too. I mean, that is a consideration. And if it's possible for the entities that are using the rooms to pay a higher price, which I believe it is probably possible, then that might help defray some of the cost. In addition, and Chair, if you think this, I'm not quite sure, help me through this if I don't need to be talking about this right now, but council did want to pursue other options with the WAC as far as either selling it or having an investor come in, reworking how it's used, moving the council chambers, lots of other things. And many of those discussions, or some of those discussions, are in place. So there is discussions about how we can do something else with the WAC that will be ongoing, hopefully, and I hope that's an encouragement. But I wouldn't want us to just eliminate the line item. I agree with what Bobby says, that there is ability to have the gym be a standalone, and because it is a real stable structure, and I think it can be of value to the community. And just to remind everybody that, or to just let them know that the discussions with the theater group, they knew that at any time we might have to have them vacate. But that was stated in the conversations. Sure, go ahead and do it, but hey, if we get a buyer or we have plans that come to fruition, that's going to have to be addressed, and you don't have a hold on it. So I just would issue caution in doing this quickly, but I agree that it's well worth, passing a budget that says council considers seriously eliminating the WAC in 12 months or however long you would think after a few questions posed to the users of the building. That's all. I'm done.
Thank you, Kathy. Audie, go ahead, please.
Okay, I was just wondering, they said that the gym can be a standalone. Does it have its own HVAC system and its own electrical panel that we could eliminate the rest of it?
Hey,
or is the HVAC system run the whole thing?
I think those kind of questions are for a discussion of the council versus a budget.
Okay. Well, okay, thank you.
Unless you have something else.
Nope.
I did want to discuss or interject really quickly that regarding what Kathy just mentioned, I appreciate everything that you just said, but I would be, I guess what I should just say is my concern is we knew last year at this time that we had financial problems that needed to be solved. We hoped that we could ask for a levy and that the community would agree, and that would help cover things. I think we all know that we have to look at reducing our expenses somewhere, especially a comment you made earlier about if there's any way possible to reduce the amount of the $35 fee. I just want to interject that I think that the only way we could get that $35 fee reduced is if we reduce some of our expenses so that we don't have as much to pay for. I personally feel community center wise, the WAC is all we have, and even though it's not the best, it's all we have. But at the same time, I would much rather reduce expenses there than in our emergency services or our police services if we're going to be asking the community to pay for it. That's just my opinion. And I think Kathy, your hand was up next, and then I'll call on Melissa and then Chrissy.
Old one. I'll take it down. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Melissa, go ahead.
Thank you. I just have to say I agree with what you've said and what Bobby said. I also don't want to just kick everybody out of there. I understand it does bring in a little bit of revenue, but the revenue falls very, very far short of what the expenses are. And if we're going to even consider asking the citizens to pay more money, we can't do that without making hard cuts first, at the very least, in my opinion.
Is that all, Melissa?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hollett, go ahead.
I just wanted to, I know the counselors here have weighed in a lot about the WAC, but I really want to, I'm not making anybody, but I really do want to hear about our citizen budget committee members and what their thoughts are about WAC, if any of them are willing to, share with that, because I really value their opinions as well.
I agree. Thank you for mentioning that. Jan, thank you for clapping. Do you have anything you want to bring up?
I'm not really clapping. I'm trying to raise my hand.
Oh.
That's the only hand I could find.
Oh, okay.
I kind of think of the WAC as it could be an asset. Right now it's a liability. And if you sell it, you get a lump of money and that's it. But if you can turn it into an asset and increase the rents, I don't know who's paying $11,000. Is it one person or is it spread out over 5 people? It can, maybe turn a profit somehow and support itself rather than just getting rid of it. I don't understand what all the money is in there. The administrative overhead, 16,000, and utilities seem extremely high. And the seasonal workers, I don't know what all of that is, but maybe those can be reduced somehow, some way. But I would try to turn it into an asset instead of letting it to continue to be a liability. That's all.
Thank you. Priscilla, I see you unmuted yourself. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, this is Priscilla. I wanted to say that I agree with Jan. I think it could be an asset and bring in some revenue. Don't
Priscilla, if you're still talking, I missed all of that. Did anyone else hear Priscilla, or was it just me?
No, she was cutting in and out.
Okay, are you having a bad connection, Priscilla?
Yeah, I think so. So what I said is I agree with Jan. I think we could have it as an asset instead of a liability and use it as a source of revenue and maybe maybe charge more rent or have more community events there. Do something for it to bring in money. That was it. Did you hear me that time?
Thank you. I did hear everything that time. I hope everyone else did as well. Are there any other budget committee members that would like to speak before I call on a couple again? Okay, seeing none. Eric, I did see you unmuted yourself. Did you have something you wanted to interject?
I have the audit accounting numbers whenever it's appropriate.
Okay, I think we'll finish up this really quick and then I'll have you go if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm not sure which one was first. I think I have down that Bobby was next and then Chrissy. Is that right?
I'm not sure if it was. Okay.
Go ahead, Bobby.
So just a couple things. I remember in talking with Rick about this building over the last several years. I know that years ago, I mean like years and years ago, they did an abatement of the asbestos that was in the roof. So that's not an issue. But I do know, and I do recall that somebody did come in and do an evaluation on the building, and they found that it would cost way too much to try to renovate everything because of all the plumbing, the nature of all the roof pitches and everything, and all the damage that's been done by all the leaks. And I can tell you, I worked in the building for a while because that's where my office was located. And having worked in there, it was one of the worst experiences I had. And the reason why is because, like, for example, sorry, I just had kids walk in. So like, I would be in my office and there would be nobody in the building. And then there was a gentleman that kept sleeping in there and just waiting outside my door that was a registered sex offender. So that was troubling. And it was just me and him there because the doors were open, you know, and the building was open, but there's nobody there to monitor that sort of thing. I mean, that's a huge expense. But I've, you know, also had experiences there where people got into fights out in the hall and I was the only person there. You know, and you would go to walk in the door, and I don't know if all of you remember, but when we had the couple that were sleeping outside the door in the breezeway, and you couldn't walk by them without having issues and being cussed at and stuff. So there's a lot of other things that go with looking at trying to turn this building around. And I think the ability to turn it around and make it into something profitable passed us by a long time ago, way before us. And I don't think, and I don't believe it's a viable building. And the only part they found viable was the gymnasium and that one section. So I think that's really important to think about because it's just not a safe building until you get it filled with people and have somebody in there that's monitoring. Because years ago we had an employee for the city that worked in there and monitored everything. You know, and there's no ability to do that. And you would really need that along with doing a lot, and I mean a lot of repairs to get that back up and going.
Right.
So that was, I was gonna say that was all I had.
Okay, and I was actually going to ask you a quick question, thinking that you were done, is you mentioned that there was some kind of a study or an assessment done. Is that something that you saw?
No, it was,
you were on council?
No, it was my brother and I had some long discussions about the building. Okay. And it was when I was housed there and I'm like, this place really creeps me out, you know, on top of everything else. And it's really scary to come in the morning when I'm the only one coming in the building. And I worry about who could have broken into the building because people were breaking in various points and there's so many places to hide in there. And so we had a lot of discussions about the building and I remember that being one of those discussions. And I know that, you know, he used to build houses and worked constructions for many, many years. So we always had a lot of interesting discussions about that. And that is something that came up because it was something that was of interest to him. And, you know, and we always talked about
this is
little
CA.
things like that.
This is the CA. I have some information on that if you want to hear it.
Perfect, thank you.
It was a study done by, I believe it was a city engineer, and estimated approximately $1.2 million to bring the building back to a serviceable condition.
Yeah, and that would have been a long time. Wasn't that done several years ago?
Yes.
So it would probably be a lot more now to bring it back.
Right. Thank you, Bobby. Was that all?
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Chrissy, I was gonna call on you next, but I see April has her hand up and I don't think she spoke yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and call on April first, and then Chrissy, and then
No
Kathy.
problem.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Dawn. I agree that the WAC could be a great building, but I feel like we just have to put too much into it to get it to where we'd want it at this point. I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. So real quick, Chrissy, I will call on you next, but I want to just quickly interject to everyone that it is 10 minutes till 8. So I'm assuming that we would be able to have this wrapped up by 8 and then maybe pick up the discussion when we come back for our next meeting. So anyone else who has information after Chrissy and, oh, I thought Kathy did. Then maybe we'll just end the meeting tonight unless someone for some reason wants to keep going later. But Chrissy, go ahead.
Thank you, Priscilla, Jan, and April, citizens that commented on that. I do want to put it out there that when I became a counselor, I was of the mindset that both Priscilla and Jan stated that we needed to put some money into it and look at it as an asset. And then I learned basically everything that Counselor Whitney just explained. And I really want to reiterate what Counselor Whitney stated. The cost to put into that is so huge. And as we know, the city doesn't have money, and the money that we do have, we really need to put into the infrastructure in the OIP and other more viable places, in my opinion. So, but thank you guys for weighing in on that.
Thank you, Chrissy. Kathy, I see you brought your hand back up again, so I'll call on you next.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, in general, I agree with everyone, and Bobby, yeah, I'm glad, Brian, that you were able to find that information, because yeah, I heard the same thing, that it just wasn't worth putting too much money into it. At that time, we had conversations about how could we use the WAC, not as far as us, but how can we use the WAC to attract housing opportunities or service opportunities. Those conversations are beginning again. And so I'm excited that you know, we have the opportunity to move forward and say, okay, commit to, or suggest to the council that they commit to eliminating the WAC. My big concern though is the food bank. You know, I just don't want, I know we have time, it's May, but if we were to unfund them, my questions also to Brian would be, if we unfund the WAC, what is the minimum we have to keep on? So we need to keep some electricity on, we'll need to keep some water on, we'll need to keep insurance on the building. So how would that change the way the budget looks? If we say, you know, we'd like to give people 4 or 5 months to find a different spot, if not sooner, and then secure the building, close it down, decide whether or not we want to close down the gym as well, and how would that actually affect the budget? So that would be a question that I would have and like to see some input on.
Thank you, Kathy. Brian, is it possible for you to respond to that now?
I wouldn't be educated, so what I'll do is have something for you, what a graceful shutdown of the WAC would look like and how much.
Kathy, I have a quick question for you, since you mentioned that there are some discussions happening that we might not be aware of. Is it possible to get the council briefed at our next council meeting as to what stuff might be going on so we can have that information going into our next budget session?
Hold on. I'm I'm answering that because I have to look to see when the meeting is that would give me information in
It's
order
Wednesday
to.
now.
May 7th.
No, so no, our next meeting is May 6th. I won't have any information until May 7th. So, but I can do it on May 20th.
Oh, gosh. Okay,
I mean, and
we
I
have a-
wouldn't, Dawn, I don't think it would impact it a lot because it's a beginning discussion and it would be conversations. I don't think it would be anything that we could monetarily say, oh, we can include this in the budget or we should include.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. I have Bobby as being next and then April and Chrissy again, if we have time. However, we are 7 minutes left before the end of the meeting. So, oh, Bobby took her hand down.
Mine's
Sorry.
really quick. Mine's really quick. I just wanted to say to anybody that I'm sure they could ask Brian to give them a little tour of the WAC, just so people could see how bad it is in there.
Yeah. Okay, April, go ahead.
I just forgot to put my hand down, Dawn. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay, Adi, did you have something else?
Yes, just a quick question for Brian. I know the buildings had a lot of leaks. Did they check for mold or anything up in the ceilings or anywhere that could be hazardous to anybody in the building? I know because water creates a lot of mold and we may be putting ourselves in a liability there. Can you answer that, Brian?
Not right now. I have to get with Robert and ask him.
Okay, thank you. I think that's something that needs to be looked at too, is because if there's mold in there, I lost my dad to that. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Adi. Chrissy, do you have your hand up again?
Oops, sorry.
Okay, I don't see any more hands up. I know there's other members here who still haven't said anything. Is there anyone else left that wants to squeeze something in really quick?
This is CA. I have a staff position for you.
Okay.
The staff position is we're adamantly opposed to zeroing out the WAC budget on July 1st. We do need time to put it to bed. So I would request that the committee not consider that option. Better yet, have the council give me a close date and I'll make it happen.
Okay, so Brian, in saying that, does that mean it would be a separate decision other than the budget decision? Whether we want to close it or not, the council would actually decide outside of budget? And
That would be
then,
the right way to do it in my mind, because it does take time to close things down. And if I had a date to work with, I could, you're going to realize the savings as I start to shut it down, but at least I have something to work with to shut it down.
Mhm. Okay, I was just thinking that maybe I didn't hear Kathy correctly earlier. Did Kathy ask if maybe we could get that information from you for the budget committee, like how long it would take and how much it would cost to keep lights on for a while and that kind of stuff?
That's a tasker for me, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, with that being said, I really don't want to open up to another fun discussion with only a couple of minutes left. If no one else has anything, I would propose that we adjourn the meeting a few minutes early if no one is opposed. Excellent. Looks like people are in favor. Okay.
Have a raised hand.
Oh, I do. Go ahead, whoever has their hand raised.
Counselor Bjornson.
Go ahead, Counselor.
Can you just state really quickly when, what time and date the next budget committee meeting is, please?
Oh, sure. Brian, do you have that in front of you? I actually don't.
It's May 5th, but let me check real quick.
May 5th at 6 o'clock.
Thank
Yep.
you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'll say meeting adjourned. Have a good night, everyone.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Thank you.